Hey everybody, hope you're doing good. So today we are going to be doing a garden tour and then also discussing the garden plan for 2025. So we'll just jump straight in. I'll show you where we grew in years past and then where we're going to be moving our growing space to, at least for this coming year. Alright, so first up we have the berry plants. I have just had these sitting up against my house for the past couple of months. It looks like some of them are actually still half alive. We have some blackberries here that are actually still kicking even after snow. But that looks to be about the only thing that currently has leaves on it. Everything here is deciduous, so all of the leaves will begin to come back soon. I guess I should name some of the stuff that's here. Let's see, we have heritage raspberries. I have 4 of those, and then there are 4 of the blackberries. There are 2 elderberries, 2 mulberries, 4 blueberries, and then what else do we have? Oh, these are some pawpaw trees here. Honestly, I kind of regret getting these a little bit. My neighbor has one that has popped up, but like they're so small, it's going to take many years for these to do anything, so I may end up just giving those away. And then the last thing that we have here has catberries. I've never tried these or seen them around, but in the information for these, it said that they can survive in my zone, which is 7B. I'm actually not sure if these actually survived. There's another one somewhere here, but we'll see if those come back. Otherwise, I'm pretty happy. It looks like everything is survived. Okay, we're just gonna move on to the raised beds now. Alright, we're over here at the raised beds. There are still lots of leaves in here. The leaves actually make a really good insulator. I've had several things that made it through the snow and everything that I really didn't think would. Okay, so first up we have this sage bush. It took a pretty hard hit when we got our snow in the area. A lot of it died off, but already, since it's just been semi-warm for about a week, you can see we have new growth coming in. And then here is an old basil plant. I can still come through and gather these flowers for seeds. I gathered some earlier when the flowers weren't dried up yet, but the seeds are still perfectly viable. And then a thyme bush. It's a pile of sticks right now. I just need to trim it back and it'll come back strong. More sage, and this is broadleaf sage, by the way. And mixed in here, all throughout these little green plants, there is a mix of oregano, parsley, and cilantro. So it is very nice to see lots of this coming up. I was not sure it was going to. Here's an echinacea plant. I'll have to come through a lot of the echinacea plants and grab the seed pods off. It's been a few months now and lots of them have spread, so I'll just grab what's left and then compost all of the stems and such. I'll leave the roots in. You can definitely dig up the root balls and use them for teas and stuff, but right now I'm at a point where I'm not ready to do that. I'm perfectly happy just using the flowers and stuff. Although I do think that the root ball is supposed to be more potent, but that's okay. All right, and in this spot, this is mugwort. It should come back. It has come back the past couple of years, so I don't see why it wouldn't this year. But you can see that I've got a little stem that has died off there. And let's see if I can find any new growth. Okay. Yeah, it'll probably just come back from the root ball as well. Here's a small rosemary plant. Many of these rosemary plants I'm probably going to dig up and move to other places. In most of these beds I have, or in 2 of these beds at least, I have 3 or 4 of them in each bed. So as for these raised beds, I don't think that I need to have all of those bushes in there taking up all of the space, and I could use it for other stuff. Because if you don't know, the rosemary can get pretty big. So I think I'm going to just transfer that to another area and leave some because it is really great to have in the beds for pest deterrent. Okay, so moving on to this bed, and I'll wrap back around to get the other side. So this is a celosia plant. Another thing that I can come through and grab the seed pods from if there are any left. I still have some celosia seeds, but I may see what I can grab. It looks like for the most part these have shaken out. Okay, so do you see this tiny, tiny black spot here? I can get my camera to focus. Yes. So there's a tiny, shiny seed there. That is not a bug. That's a celosia seed. And these get covered in them. Whenever the flowers come through, there will just be tons of seeds throughout the entire length, much like basil. And then down through here, it looks like there are some weeds, and then also more carrots coming up. So the carrots, I wasn't sure that they were going to survive the winter because whenever the snow came through, the foliage from it started looking like it was going to die back pretty good. But it seems to be bouncing back. And I'll probably just let those go to seed and either collect the seed to store or just have them go to flower and use them for cut flowers or just for the pollinators. Next, in this spot, we have garlic that is finally coming up. Look at those sprouts. This garlic was actually planted from regular bulbs that you get at the grocery store, so I'll be very excited to see how big these get. I'm not, overly confident I'm going to be getting giant bulbs, but I'm sure you get something probably pretty close to what you would get at a grocery store. Okay, and that is actually all that is actively growing here that is not weeds. So I'm going to circle back to the other side. Okay, so starting back from the end again, there is a sage bush. A lot of it is kind of died back. I need to cut that back closer to the center so that the growth can come in more strong and it's not just growing from the ends with the middle bare. And here is some more thyme. Another thyme. More broadleaf sage. And then another rosemary bush. And they really appreciate the cooler weather. I need to come out here and collect a lot of this. My rosemary is actually decently old. It's like at least a year old for the dried rosemary, but even then it's better than any rosemary I've ever gotten from the grocery store. Okay, rant over. And we'll skip that because we already went over everything that was there. So for these 2 beds, I have strawberries growing all throughout, and it looks like the foliage is actually starting to come back. You see there? I'm actually considering digging these up and moving them to some kind of planter or a hanging pot, something where I can just watch them a little bit better. They do pretty well here. This will be their 3rd year, I believe. So last year they had just started getting some strawberries. So I might just let them go and see what happens and then collect runners. And then other than that, there are lots of dead marigolds in here that I'll need to collect the seeds from. They've already deposited many in there, so I'm sure that I'm going to have a bed full of marigolds here, and I should probably just pick those up and transplant them other places as they come up and not sow anymore, but we'll see. I'll probably end up heavily sowing those in other places too. There's some lavender. Fresh lavender is a great smell. If you haven't smelled that from a fresh plant, it is heavenly. I believe that that's all that's in here. Oh, that is not all. There are all kinds of greens that are growing in here too. I did not think a lot of these were going to make it through the winter, but there are plenty of lettuces, arugula, dandelion, Swiss chard, things like that that are still popping up all over the place here. I had sowed some collard greens over here. I'm not sure if that's what this is, but we'll find out. Either way, I'll definitely be sowing more of that because I need to. And here we have another sage plant. Lemongrass. I've never harvested from that, so I'm not actually sure if I can harvest it now or if it's at optimum quality, so I'll have to check on that before I do it, but either way, I need to go and trim that back and get it ready for this coming year. Here's some more echinacea that's right on top of it. And back to the lemongrass, I'm probably actually going to dig that up and move it to a pot or just give it more space. It's right on top here and it looks like it's just getting established, but I know that once it does, it's really going to take up a lot of space. So that kind of seems to be a running theme here. I need to move out some of the things that are getting large from these raised beds. Alright, so here is some thyme. These two are looking a little better. They have a lot more green on them than all of the others that I've looked at. I still need to go back and trim all of the dead growth. And I can go ahead and collect some for use as well. Here is another echinacea plant. Need to grab up all of the seed pods from these guys and then compost the stems. Throughout the middles here, I did have lilac and celosia planted, so we'll see if the lilac comes back because it did not go to flower last year. And then, of course, the celosia, it reseeds very easily, so I'm sure that we'll see that along with the basil. I had that here too. And over to this side, we have more rosemary, a lavender plant. We're starting to get some new growth. On the ends there, the old is kind of crusty. More rosemary. Some more marigolds. And then, let's see, thyme, sage, and more rosemary. So that's it for what's growing in the raised beds currently. Of course, like I said, I'm going to have to pull out a lot of that stuff and it's going to get replaced with herbs, flowers, whatever. And then, so now I'm going to move on to what our actual garden plan is, where we were growing in years past, and then where we're going to be growing now. Okay, so we're in my backyard now. This is the area that we gardened in every year except for last year. I don't know if you can see, we have like a faint outline. We've always just tilled this garden and we had a fence with chicken wire around it, and I would always trellis the tomatoes up the sides of the chicken wire and then do whatever else just all throughout. That area would get more water, so I really like to do melons and pumpkins and stuff down there. Also corn did okay. But there's also this trellis I've never gotten to use this. I tried to use it the year before last, but it was just such a bad season for us that nothing even grew tall enough to get up there. So I would love to use this year. I may actually end up trellising all of the tomatoes on it, but it will be moved to a different area because we're not going to be gardening here anymore, at least this next year. Okay, so that's where it was before, and now we're going to go to the other areas. Oh, also, all of the daffodils are finally starting to come up. Probably within another month they'll be blooming. So this flower bed is where I grew my peppers and tomatoes last year. That we had kind of decided right before we were going to do the garden to not do it back there and to just kind of work with what we could last year. And we're somewhat going to be doing the same thing this year, except I think I'm going to have a little bit more positive attitude about it. Last year I just kind of put all the plants in the ground and let them go. I didn't do stakes or try and prevent animals from eating them. But you know what? It was a nice little rest year, and I'm ready to do more this year. I have a bad habit of planting too many tomatoes, or really just too much overall, and having more than I can deal with. So I would, somewhat trellis the tomatoes, but I wouldn't go through and prune them and do things that can really maximize your crop. So instead of having 50 plants, I could have 10 plants and get the same thing or better. So that's something that I'm excited to implement this year and try and be better about. Less plants, better quality. But we did those last year, and I will probably end up doing those in the same area. They did really great here for the ones that had a chance to grow, which is mostly right in this area. There were large cherry tomatoes and then Roma tomatoes, and they sprawled, but they did good. They actually did really good here, so I don't have a problem doing that, and then I may end up bringing that trellis from the back up here and doing something with it. We'll see. I don't know how that would look, so if I don't use it here, I have another area that I can use it. But with that being said, do you see there are all kinds of skins, tomato skins? There were lots of tomatoes on these when they went, so there are going to be lots of baby tomatoes popping up in this area as well. So that's something that I won't have to stress about too much either, is if I need more tomato plants, I can just go and dig them up because I know they're going to be here. All right. So there were several other kinds of tomatoes that I grew through here that were like more slicing varieties, but none of them did that well. I got a handful of tomatoes throughout here. That was mostly because those were getting eaten. For whatever reason, the deer would come through and stop eating the stuff about right here. So we just had this one area where we were successfully getting stuff from. But anyways, we had tomatoes throughout here, and then the peppers were here. And they did come through and trim those down several times until the hot peppers started getting on them, and then they didn't really want them anymore. But that actually was pretty helpful because when they grew in, they were extremely bushy. Now, because they had gotten trimmed so many times, by the time that they were able to get very bushy and healthy like that, it was too late into the season for them to be putting on peppers. So I actually dug those up, and they are currently being overwintered into the house. And again, I'm probably going to mix it up and not just do peppers and tomatoes. I'm going to be outfitting our whole garden throughout a couple of garden beds, and then an empty space, which will probably just be potatoes and stuff. Alright, so in this area, I actually sowed some spearmint last year at the end of the season, but I don't think that it ever germinated, and I don't see it popping up now. So I might have to try that again. What is this here? I think that's nettle, I'm not sure. It might just be a weed, but it's not spearmint. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the other garden bed that we have to work with. See, there's a lot of grass and weeds built up here, but also we have a lot of bulb flowers that come up. So I'll either just leave those and work around them, or they'll be getting dug up and moved to other places. I need to separate a lot of those too. Those bulbs have been here for years and years and years. This house was built in the 1950s, and I think that they really like to landscape. There's a lot of that kind of stuff around here. Okay, so obviously all of this is going to have to be cleared out, and there's not really anything that grows in this area. So I've got kind of this whole free space to be working with so that I can plant some vegetables, and then I could go to the other side, but I may not. We'll just see what happens and how much space I actually need. And this area is empty. It's more shaded on this side. So it could do like lettuces and things like that if I needed it, but I'm not. It doesn't look like I'm hurting to like have to use this space. Oh yeah, also through these beds, both sides, we're definitely going to be coming back with like compost, mulch, whatever we can come up with that. I've got a big pile of compost that I've been really working on for a couple of years now, so I need to go through and spread that out. And then up here, we have been clearing this area out. At the beginning of the year, we rented, I think it was a skid steer. Sorry, I'm not good with machinery. But anyway, we're going to come through and till like some bare spots in here. And we're going to plant the potatoes, pumpkins, anything large and vining like that. I'll have to pick out a good area with like good light and all that. It's pretty new. We've got a lot of new trees down, so I'll have to figure out what's going to work best where. But other than that, I'll come back with some chicken wire and put up fencing wherever we need it. And I'll have to come up with some trellis ideas. I really like the look of like teepee trellis or just very sweet looking stuff like that. So I've got a Pinterest board putting together, and I'm very excited to see how this year's crop is going to turn out. Okay, well, that is it for today's garden tour. I hope that you enjoyed it and a look into what the plan is probably going to look something like. It may not turn out exactly like that. Honestly, whenever I plan my garden, it never turns out like that. I probably plan it 6 times a year before it actually comes to fruition, and then it's still not the same. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye!